In this episode of the Frontier Journal, we will explore Sly Park, located in Pollock Pines, Northern California. If you are in the area, you can visit the Sly Park Recreation Area on Jenkinson Lake. It offers visitors with day use facilities, campgrounds, RV sites, boat launch, and general admission. Sly Park is named after James Calvin Sly, who was a member of the Mormon Battalion. The Mormon Battalion was called into service by James K. Polk at the onset of the Mexican War. However, the battalion's service in California was not primarily military in nature. The 500-man battalion started their voyage from Council Bluffs, Nebraska, and moved west with the California Column under direct orders of General Stephen W. Kearny. This assignment served not only to provide a battalion of infantry to the war effort, but also to maintain positive relations with the Mormon community, which had been persecuted and violently expelled from several states. James K. Polk would write in his diary on June 2, 1846, "The main object of taking them into service would be to consolate them and prevent them from assuming a hostile attitude towards the United States after their arrival in California." And so, the following order was written by Secretary of War, June 3, 1846. "It is known that a large body of Mormon emigrants are en route to California for the purpose of settling in that country. You are desired to use all proper means to have a good understanding with them, to the end that the United States may have their cooperation in taking possession of and holding that country. You are hereby authorized to muster into service." The mission would prove to be extremely difficult for the Mormons who had little to their name. The St. Louis Reveille published an article on February 1, 1847, written by an officer embedded with the Mormon Battalion. It reads as follows: "Our animals were hardly fit for service. Many of them had been taken out of the harness about 10 days before, after crossing the prairies and plains from Fort Leavenworth. The provision wagons were heavy and unwieldy, too many in proportion to the animals, yet insufficient for the amount of provisions called for, even at the half-ration rate. I saw athletic and vigorous men reduced by thirst and fatigue to the imbecility of children, their bodies attenuated and feeble, their faces bloated, their eyes sunken, their feet lacerated and bruised, mechanically moving forward without a murmur and without an object, the latter having been lost sight in the gloomy contemplation of their present helpless condition." During their 2,000-mile march across the territories, the battalion would not see actual combat, but due to their steadfastness throughout the excursion, Lieutenant Colonel Philip St. George Koch selected the Mormons to keep the peace in San Diego, and on July 16, 1847, the unit had completed their service and was dismissed. At this point, many of the Mormons were prepared to be reunited with their families who had set out for California. Although many of the Mormons planned on resettling in California to escape persecution, the majority of the colony who had actually set out before the Mormon Battalion was formed, the majority of that colony decided to stop in the Great Basin, primarily occupying what is known today as Salt Lake City. Upon learning that their Mormon counterparts in Utah would no longer be traveling to California, anywhere from 150 to 200 members of this battalion decided to actually stay in California. Many would also re-enlist in the U.S. Army. Not all members, though, decided to stay in California, and a new party was created to travel north and reunite with their families. Those who departed for Salt Lake City, Utah, would go on to discover gold while working at Sutter's Mill in 1848, as well as, of course, discover Sly's Park, the subject of this video. Members of this party headed to Salt Lake City, Utah, and consolidated in what they called Pleasant Valley, known as Placerville today. While the battalion was stationed there, waiting for spring to arrive and the snow to melt, many of the men took jobs working at Sutter's Mill. On January 24, 1848, while working on construction of the Sutter's Mill, James Marshall found flakes of gold in the South Fork American River. Two workers at the mill, Henry Bigler and Azariah Smith, were veterans of the Mormon Battalion and recorded their experience in the journals. Bigler recorded the date when gold was discovered as January 24th, 1848 in his diary. The diary entry does mention, though, that although they discovered what appeared to be gold, they had to get it tested, and so it wasn't until later that the discovery was reported, but the actual sighting date would be January 24th, 1848. Although the exact contributions of these men was not well documented, the fact that they were working at the mill indicates there is more to learn about these men and their contributions. Now, as word travels fast, several Mormons decided to try their luck panning for gold at Flour Mill, which is now known as Mormon Island. In July 1848, weather conditions sufficiently improved, and the remaining members of the Mormon Battalion began to move up the divide between the American and Cosumnes River, consisting of 45 men, 1 woman, a soldier's wife, 17 wagons, 150 horses, and 150 cattle. During this endeavor, James Sly was a member of a scouting party that went ahead to find pastures for the livestock. James Sly discovered a valley which was ideal for grazing. The battalion stopped there for a couple of days and named the area Sly Park. In the historic records, it says, by July 2nd, the company was again on the march. 2 days' travel from Pleasant Valley, that is about 50 miles east of Sutter's Fort, brought them to Sly's Park, a small valley or mountain dell, thus named for Captain James C. Sly, who first discovered it. 4 days' travel over rough and rugged mountains took them across the summit, and they found themselves safely landed at the head of Carson Valley, Nevada. This name, of course, remains to this day and was later given to the dam which would be built in 1955 on Jenkinson Lake. After the Mormon Battalion reached their destination in the Great Basin, Sly would go on to marry Susanna Guston on March 25, 1849, in Great Salt Lake City. Later, he was wounded outside Fort Leaven early in the Utah Black Hawk War. Surviving this conflict, he would later die in 1864 at the age of 57 in Chicken Creek, Utah. Today, the valley of Sly's Park is now Jenkinson Lake, impounded by Sly Park Dam. This dam is an earth-filled dam, 190 feet high and 760 feet long. It is one of several dams that is a part of the Central Valley Project, which was started officially in 1933. However, the origin of this project is credited to Colonel Barton S. Alexander, who was ordered to the West Coast and served as the chief U.S. Army engineer in the region. He started the project officially in 1873, when he was appointed president of a congressional board to study the potential of irrigating the San Joaquin Valley, Tulare Valley, and Sacramento Valley. This board would later be known as the Alexander Commission. While the survey was completed in 1873, most of the construction was not initiated until the Great Depression. This report paved the way for future development of Northern and Central California, but of course was mired in politics and legal battles until economic factors became impossible to ignore. Today, the Sly Park Dam provides municipal water supply for El Dorado and surrounding areas, irrigation for agriculture such as Apple Hill, and the lake serves as a popular recreation area.